The first foreclosure notice for my parents' house arrived on a Tuesday. My mom called me, screaming, a kind of screeching sound I hadn't heard since my brother fell out of a tree when he was 10. "How could you do this to us?" she shrieked, her voice cracking with a mix of fury and panic. "After everything we've done for you? We're going to lose our home. Because of you." I let her tirade wash over me, holding the phone a few inches from my ear. When she finally paused to take a breath, probably to gear up for another round, I calmly asked one simple question. "Does Kevin have his half of the mortgage payment ready?" Silence. Not just a pause, but a deep, profound, black hole of silence. Then a sputtering sound. Before she could form a single word, I hung up. You see, for the last 5 years, I hadn't been paying rent on their so-called investment property. No, I had been paying the entire mortgage on their primary home, the one they were now about to lose. And they had just kicked me out of the apartment I was unknowingly paying for them to own, all to make room for my deadbeat, 32-year-old brother. Let me take you back to the beginning. It all started about 5 years ago. I was 23, fresh out of college with my first real job in the tech industry. I was making decent money, enough to finally get a place of my own and escape the roommate lottery. My parents, in what seemed like a moment of brilliant timing and parental generosity, sat me down. "Honey," my dad started, "we know you're looking for an apartment. And we just so happen to have that one-bedroom condo we bought as an investment property a few years back. It's sitting empty." My mom jumped in. "The tenant just moved out. It's perfect for you. It's in a great location, close to your new job. We'll give you a deal. Just pay us fair market rent, and you won't have to deal with a weird landlord. You'll be helping us with our investment, and we'll be helping you." It sounded like a win-win. Seriously. I trusted them completely. Why wouldn't I? They were my parents. So we agreed on a number. It seemed a little high, but it was a nice place, and the convenience was undeniable. I set up an automatic bank transfer for the first of every month, and that was that. For 5 years, life was good. I was the perfect tenant. I paid on time, every single time, without fail. I kept the apartment immaculate. When the dishwasher broke, I replaced it myself. When a light fixture in the living room flickered and died, I bought a new, modern one and installed it. I painted the walls, put up shelves, and really made it my home. I was proud of it. Meanwhile, my older brother, Kevin, was on a different path. Kevin is what you'd call a free spirit, which is a polite way of saying he's never held a job for more than 6 months. He was always chasing some artistic dream or a get-rich-quick scheme. He was a musician one year, a day trader the next, then a podcast host, then an aspiring crypto baron. None of it ever panned out. He'd live with a girlfriend until she got tired of paying for everything, then he'd boomerang back to my parents' house for a recharge, which could last anywhere from a few months to a year. My parents enabled every second of it. He was their golden child. My success was expected. Kevin's struggles were a tragedy that required constant family support. The money I was paying them in rent just disappeared into the family coffers, and I never really questioned where it went. I just assumed it was, for their investment. The beginning of the end started with a phone call on a Sunday night. It was my mom. "Honey," she said, in that sweetest honey voice she only uses when she wants something. "Kevin had a little falling out with Tiffany. He needs a place to stay for a bit." I sighed. A falling out meant Tiffany had finally come to her senses and kicked him out. This was a familiar pattern. "Mom, I don't know. My place is just a one-bedroom." "Oh, but you have that little office space," she chirped. "He could just put an air mattress in there. Just for a couple of weeks, sweetie. Just until he gets back on his feet." A couple of weeks. Those were the magic words. I was hesitant, but what could I say? He was my brother. So I agreed. "Okay, a couple of weeks. But that's it. He needs to be actively looking for a job and another place." Of course. He will be. You're a lifesaver." The first week was, okay. Kevin was quiet, almost contrite. He stayed in the small office, slept on the air mattress I provided, and mostly kept to himself. But by week 2, the novelty of his tough situation had worn off for him. A couple of weeks became a month. Then 2 months. Kevin was not, in fact, getting back on his feet. His feet were firmly planted on my coffee table, usually surrounded by my empty snack containers. He'd sleep until noon, play video games all afternoon with his headphones on, shouting at people online, and then work on his music all night, which consisted of playing the same 3 chords on an acoustic guitar while sighing dramatically. He never bought groceries. He never cleaned. My pristine apartment, my sanctuary, started to look and smell like a frat house. The sink was always full of his dishes. The bathroom floor was always damp. He'd use the last of the milk and just put the empty carton back in the fridge. The little things that drive you insane. I started complaining to my parents. Gently at first. "Hey Mom, Kevin's been here for 6 weeks now. Any word on him finding a job? Oh, honey, give him a break. The creative process can't be rushed. He's working on some amazing new songs." I tried again a few weeks later, my patience wearing thin. "Dad, I came home yesterday and Kevin had eaten the entire lasagna I meal prepped for the week. I need him to at least contribute to the groceries." "Now, be nice," he'd say. "He's your brother. Family helps family. You can afford a little extra food." The escalation was slow, like a rising tide of disrespect. One Friday, I came home from a long day at work, looking forward to a quiet evening, and found Kevin and 3 of his buddies in my living room, drinking my beer and playing my PlayStation. They'd left pizza boxes on the floor, and the whole place was a disaster. "What is this?" I asked, my voice tight. Kevin just looked at me and grinned. "Hey sis, we're just hanging. This is Dave, Mike, and Steve." I forced a smile. "Hi. Kevin, you need to ask me before you have people over. This is my home." He actually rolled his eyes. "Relax. It's a family property, right? Chill out." That night, I called my parents furious. I was practically yelling. "He's treating my home like a hotel. He's disrespectful, he's a slob, and he had his friends over without even asking me. He said it's a family property. You have to talk to him." My mom's response was a splash of ice water to the face. "Well, technically, he's right. It is our property. You're just renting it. And maybe if you were a little more welcoming, he wouldn't feel like he had to sneak around. You have that whole big apartment to yourself, you can't share a little? He's family." I was stunned. I felt this hot, prickling shame, as if I was the one being unreasonable. They were master gaslighters. They made me feel like I was the selfish one for wanting to live in peace in the home I paid for. The real bombshell, the discovery that changed everything, happened by accident. I was updating my personal budget and thinking about my long-term financial goals. I wanted to buy a place of my own someday. Out of sheer curiosity, I went to the county's public records website to look up my apartment building. I wanted to see what other units had sold for recently, just to get a feel for the market. I found my unit number. And I saw the owners' names, my parents. Standard stuff. But then I saw the mortgage information. And there was a big, beautiful, paid in full stamped next to it. According to the county records, the mortgage on my apartment had been paid off 2 years ago. That didn't make sense. I was still paying them rent. A lot of it. Where was that money going? A cold, sick feeling started creeping up my spine. I had a horrible thought. With trembling hands, I typed in my parents' home address. I found their property records. And there it was. An active mortgage. I clicked to see the details and my heart stopped. The monthly mortgage payment listed for their primary residence, the house I grew up in, the house they were living in right now, was $2,417.58. My monthly rent payment to them was $2,417.58. It was the exact same number. Down to the penny. For 5 years, they hadn't just been lying to me. They had orchestrated a massive, long-term deception. The rent I was paying, the money I thought was for my home, was a direct pipeline paying for their home. The investment property was just a shell company up front. It was a place to park me, the responsible daughter with a good job, so I could unknowingly fund their entire life and, by extension, my brother's freeloading existence. The anger I felt was different from anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't hot and explosive. It was cold, sharp, and clarifying. Every dismissive comment, every time they told me to be nice or share, it all clicked into place. They didn't see me as their daughter. They saw me as an income stream. A walking, talking ATM. And Kevin wasn't just my annoying brother. He was a dependent they were financing with my money. I was paying for the roof over his head, both at their house and now at mine. This was the breaking point. The point of no return. That weekend, I drove to their house. I sat them down at their dining room table, the one I had apparently been paying for, and I laid it all out. I had printed the property records. I slid the papers across the table. "I know what you've been doing," I said, my voice steady. "I know that my rent is your mortgage payment. You've been lying to me for 5 years." My dad had the decency to look ashamed. He just stared at the table. But my mom didn't even flinch. She crossed her arms, a look of defiance on her face. "And what if it is?" she said, her voice sharp. "We're your parents. We needed the help. You make good money, you can afford it. It's what family does. You should have been happy to help us." I just stared at her, speechless. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. "So you just decided to lie? For 5 years. It wasn't a lie, it was just a family arrangement," she snapped. And speaking of family arrangements, we need to talk about Kevin. He's not comfortable in that little office. He needs a proper room to work on his music. So, he's going to be moving into the master bedroom. You can take the office space. It's only fair. He has nothing and you have everything. I felt the world tilt on its axis. They were kicking me out of my own bedroom, in the apartment I was paying for, to give it to my unemployed brother. And the cherry on top? "And your rent will stay the same, of course," she added, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. "We still need you to cover the mortgage." That was it. That was the moment the last shred of my loyalty, of my familial obligation, turned to dust and blew away. I wasn't just an ATM anymore. I was being demoted to a guest in my own home, while still being expected to be the sole benefactor. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked at them, this strange couple who I no longer recognized as my parents, and I nodded. A strange calm washed over me. "Okay," I said softly. "I understand." And then I stood up and walked out of the house. The next morning, I was on the phone with my bank. I canceled the automatic payment of $2,417.58, effective immediately. Then I started looking for a new apartment. I found a place that was even nicer, in a better neighborhood, and get this, $500 a month cheaper. I signed the lease that afternoon. I took the next 2 weeks off from work as vacation. I told my brother I was working on a big project and needed to focus, so he barely noticed as I started discreetly packing my most important things, my documents, my clothes, my computer, my sentimental items. The last day of the month was a Saturday. I knew my parents and Kevin had a tradition of going out for a fancy dinner on the last Saturday of the month, a tradition I now realized that I was funding. I waited until they left. And then I called the movers I had hired. We descended on that apartment like a swarm of locusts. We took everything that I had purchased. The new couch, the coffee table, the bed, the TV. We took the pots and pans, the silverware, the microwave I bought when the old one died. I unscrewed the modern light fixture from the living room ceiling and replaced it with the cheap, original one I'd stored in a closet. I uninstalled my bidet toilet seat. I even unscrewed the fancy, high-pressure shower head I'd put in and replaced it with the old, calcified piece of junk it came with. Within 2 hours, the apartment was a barren, empty box. It was exactly as I had found it 5 years ago, echoey and sterile. On the gleaming, empty kitchen counter, I left a single, white envelope. Inside was a note. It said, "Rent is due on the 1st. But my new address isn't here. Good luck. P.S. The mortgage on your house is also due. Hope Kevin gets a job soon." I walked out, didn't look back, and blocked all their numbers on my phone. The first few days were silent. Blissful silence. Then, the storm hit. It started on the 2nd of the month. A flood of texts and calls from my parents' numbers. When I didn't answer, they started using my cousins' phones, my aunt's phones. The messages were a cocktail of confusion, then rage, then pitiful pleading. "Where are you? Your stuff is gone. You can't just leave. The rent is due. Your mother is having a nervous breakdown. Call us." I ignored all of it. I was in my new, beautiful apartment, unpacking and feeling a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. It was like a massive weight had been lifted off my soul. A month went by. And that's when the phone call I described at the beginning happened. The screaming, the accusations of betrayal, the foreclosure notice. My calm question about Kevin's half of the payment was the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. The fallout was nuclear. They tried to paint me as a monster to the entire family. A cruel, ungrateful daughter who abandoned her loving parents in their time of need. Some of them believed it at first. But I had a trump card, my super reasonable, no-nonsense Aunt Carol. When she called to talk some sense into me, I didn't argue. I just said, "Aunt Carol, let me email you something." I sent her the screenshots of the two property records, side by side, with the identical mortgage and rent amounts highlighted. The phone rang again 5 minutes later. "Oh, honey," was all she said. Oh my God. Aunt Carol became my champion. The truth spread through the family grapevine like wildfire. The narrative shifted. Suddenly, my parents weren't the poor, abandoned victims. They were the architects of a 5-year lie. The family was divided, but the people who mattered were on my side. So, what happened to them? Well, they couldn't pay their mortgage. Shocker. Kevin's music career didn't suddenly take off and produce a 6-figure income. They had no savings because every spare penny had gone to propping up his lifestyle. To avoid a full foreclosure, they had to do a short sale on their house, the house they had lived in for 30 years. They lost almost everything. And the irony, the beautiful, poetic justice of it all, is where they ended up. They, along with Kevin, now live in that one-bedroom investment apartment. The three of them crammed into the empty box I left behind. The property that was supposed to be my home, the one they used to deceive me, is now their cage. As for me, I'm thriving. I love my new place. I've saved more money in the last year than I did in the previous 5 combined. It's sad, in a way. I mourn the family I thought I had. But the truth is that family was an illusion. I'm estranged from my parents and brother now, and while that hurts sometimes, the feeling of freedom is so much greater. The trash, as they say, took itself out.